How many times have you wanted to volunteer, offer to help someone you see struggling, or speak up about injustice, but you stopped yourself? Why are you hesitating? Fear, maybe shame or guilt? Those emotions are coming from your ego, and your ego is not a good enough reason to hide your light. Today is the day that you take that step to empower others. Today you will recognize what you have in common with those living unstable lives. You have discovered Empower by Example with Laura Rock, where we are redefining traditional philanthropy, and we need your help. Listen here for new ideas, programs that are pushing boundaries, moving the needle, and creating real change. We will be giving you action steps, and we want to hear your takeaways. I'm Laura Rock, and this is Empower by Example. Thank you so much for joining us again on Empower by Example. My name is Laura Rock, and I'm the founder of the Rock Family Foundation. And today I have a very special guest. Michael Yonas from the Pittsburgh Foundation is here to talk with us about programming that they are funding at the Pittsburgh Foundation, his own personal volunteer and philanthropy style. And we're probably going to talk about day camp. We have lots of things to say about day camp. How are you doing, Michael?
I'm great.
You're
Thank
great?
you. Yeah, thanks
Awesome.
for having me.
Thanks for being here. This is going to be really fun. I'm really excited.
Me
and
too.
I am like a super fan of your work.
Oh, thank you. And vice versa.
Oh, super fans. And I met you during the Black Girls Equity Alliance in a lobby. It was, it was very well thought out.
Yeah, it was meant to be.
We kept you from your award. I remember where I was like, on the program, it says you're winning an award right now.
Right.
I was
That is right. Yeah.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
Thanks
No, that was
for
meant to
talking
be.
us.
That was perfect.
Yeah, it was great. And then I came in and spoke with you and Michelle, and you guys wowed me there too and had all these great ideas. So do you want to tell our listeners about the Pittsburgh Foundation and your role there?
Sure. So I serve as the Director of Research and Special Initiatives for the Pittsburgh Foundation. I've been there for about almost 5 years now, maybe just 5 years in this July.
Happy 5 years.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good anniversary. And my role is both as I help with data and evaluation and a lot of tracking of our work, some strategic planning within the department, and then I do grant making, kind of across a portfolio of the different areas of community economic development, health and human services, some education, and a little bit in the arts. And I also work with some of the donor advised funds. So that special initiatives piece, I would say, is sort of the pinch hitter.
Nice.
Where needed, I get involved in a lot of work. So it's been really exciting to learn a lot more about the community foundation space, be involved in lots of departmental work, but then across the foundation too. And across the, philanthropic community as well.
And you can pretty much have a different day every day.
So yeah, in my portfolio for the grant making that we do every quarter can vary a lot. So I feel like it's one of the greatest gifts of being in philanthropy and working at the foundation is learning so much about what's happening in the city, meeting so many interesting people, hearing about all the projects, things that I would never have that exposure. And then the most important part is, I think, developing new relationships with people which transcend those projects, but ways in which we can work together.
Oh, the collaboration in Pittsburgh is amazing.
Yeah.
Especially in the spaces that you and I are looking. I don't know what everyone else is doing, but I've just been so thrilled.
A real willingness to, I think, work together across different communities in different ways.
Share the sandbox.
Yeah. So before the foundation, I spent about maybe 18 years in public health practice. So I was a faculty member. My background and training is in public health. So I worked as a faculty member doing a lot of community engagement and community-based participatory research around violence prevention and asthma prevention for kids, a lot of chronic disease management. And a lot of that fit really well around, I think, the work that we do, and I know the work that you guys are interested in doing around single families and supporting young people in communities, because it's the context in which they live that really drive a lot of the outcomes that we want to help address, that they're experiencing because of where they live.
So you've always been a data guy.
So it's funny you say that. So yes, I think technically I'm a data guy. I'm I have the graduate degrees in research and evaluation.
Oh, yeah, then it's technical. Yeah.
Well, no, but I would say that really my interest in data and research has always just been as developing a skill set and tools for helping create and facilitate community change. So that participatory research component of the work is really important, and how to work with communities, work with young people, and design research, implement research in a way that helps to facilitate change that they want to see. So I'm a painter by training. I'm an artist.
Wow.
So I have an undergraduate degree in painting.
What do you paint with?
I do mostly acrylic on paper.
Nice.
A lot of urban landscapes,
Cool.
I guess, things like that. But all my work has been reflecting on the places I've lived, the relationships I have, and have developed with young people and with communities some ways to use art to help facilitate that change too. So I'd say research was one way to help identify where there were gaps, where there were problems, but really build on the strengths of communities to help address that change.
Well, I love that you have both the analytical, which sometimes is the most helpful and clear, and then you have the creative, which is something that people want to participate in, and both of them going together creates a lot of really great ways and pathways for change.
And I'd say the work that we spoke about with Michelle McMurray was sort of the work that we're doing at the foundation that brings together that quantitative data but has a real qualitative data focus, which is where most of my background and training has been in. So how to integrate the two.
And where your heart is, right? And so I feel a lot of heart coming out of that office.
Yeah,
you guys,
I'd say that, and I'd say it's also wanting to embed really important work while also having fun and enjoying that work and doing it together with people. So I'd say the same way.
Great. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for telling us what you guys are doing. Now, what are your focuses on, this week? Just give us an example. What did you guys talk about this week?
Oh gosh, just before coming over here, we're releasing a request for proposals, some local and some national, to help find an organization that'll help us do some really systematic mixed methods research around the benefits cliff. So how to really build on the single women raising children research that we've been doing at the foundation, to really look at how the cliff effect is impacting families in our region, how many families, in what way, things that we learned from the women who were experts that shared their expertise with us with the research report.
Wow.
Building on that work, but then integrating that by keeping people at the center. So we also have that juvenile justice related research work that we did. So we're moving that research forward, looking at all the grants that we funded to date. But if we put families in the middle, we realize that these sort of benefits cliff or juvenile justice system involvement or issues of eviction that we're working on, families and communities are experiencing all those at the same time. It's systems like ours that often separate them. So how do we do that work in a way that really embeds the expertise of community and family to think about, one, building on their strengths. How are they dealing with all these incredible challenges, factors that really they're doing nothing to influence necessarily? How do we promote better employment opportunities, safe and reliable housing opportunities? How do we address the things upstream that create the symptoms that young people end up experiencing in the juvenile justice system? And then from the benefits cliff, people who want to thrive and really want to do well economically, but to have these sort of systems in place that are really designed almost to prevent that. So we're trying to look at all those pieces together. So today's conversation was around the benefits cliff RFP, some of the juvenile justice research, and then tomorrow we're doing more focus groups with providers that are helping families that are experiencing eviction.
Wow.
And we're thinking not only on ways to support those efforts from what's our role as a foundation, share with the Rock Family Foundation and all of the local partners what piece do we own, but then also think about what are the intersecting points that we can best support families.
So this cliff effect, this benefits cliff, this was just introduced to me by Tammy Thompson a few weeks ago. And we were talking about Tammy right before we started talking about on the podcast. And so do you mind if I try to explain what it is and you correct me? Okay, because I want to make sure I understand. It's so fascinating. You have these bills that are going through really big institutions like Congress and state senates that are talking about raising a minimum wage. And let's just say it's $15 an hour. That's the number that gets tossed around all the time. So if it's $15 an hour and you have people who are making, let's say minimum wage $7.25, I believe. So you have that big gap there of almost $8. And if people automatically just started making $15 an hour instead of what they're making right now, all of a sudden they wouldn't qualify for subsidies like childcare and housing and the kinds of things that they're used to receiving. And so they're actually not making more money, they're actually spending more money, and they're more in the hole than they would be if they continued getting the subsidies and made $7 an hour. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
And so it's this notion that you might increase your income, but then makes you not eligible for some of those core basic needs services, like childcare is a good one, transportation, food, medical health care support, things like that.
All of those.
So when that happens, you might lose up to $10, $12 of benefit support for every dollar you increase, or I think that depends on what happens in which state and which benefit. But there are some really interesting and novel models where some systems have decided to waive or delay some of the benefits cliff piece, where Circles and others initiatives, where when you have a Circle leader, the individual who has a goal in life, but they're surrounded by Circle allies, it might be an attorney or a landlord or someone, they help negotiate with those other systems and people to say, well, maybe talking to the landlord and saying, this individual's, got a new job, they've got a raise, can you not increase their rent, or have the housing
6
authority
months,
delay some of that,
a year,
waive that.
whatever.
The housing authority, the city of Pittsburgh, has a program where if you're in certain programs of theirs, they may waive up to 2 years the increase in that rent to allow the person to maybe build some stability in practice.
Some equity, that's amazing.
So I think that those are areas we're interested in, like most of our work at the foundation, starting with really trying to understand the quantitative data side, just the landscape of who and what and where and how are people affected, but then really prioritizing that voice component. So making sure we in our outside perspective, although, certainly like-minded and I think good people and wanting, but outsiders should never be making decisions that affect insiders. So how do we really learn from people with lived experience to contextualize that data, to think about where there are opportunities to build on within those communities? And the Single Women Raising Children report, one of the greatest findings was all the things that moms who are single, that are raising young people, that are outside of the city, that have limited transportation, all the things that they're doing every day to survive are just incredible. How do we build on that kind of energy and expertise and think about ways to support them? The benefits cliff is one area, but we may end up focusing on some of those other areas, like childcare specifically, or maybe on food access and benefits in that way, or the housing market, to think about ways to help people really secure affordable and secure housing, which is really the bedrock for a lot of those other areas that people can be able to thrive.
Which is what that's where our work really intersects, I think, is that housing piece and those basic needs being taken care of to the point where you can stabilize and grow and feel safe and have, feel taken care of. And I love the idea of this circle with these allies who are on your behalf doing these things, but it is your idea and it was your, you're the person who needs the just the grace. A little bit of
just
grace.
The relationship and support. I mean, I think about, when you can predict someone's lifelong experience of poverty by the zip code in which they're born in, most anywhere in this country. It has nothing to do with their choice. I was lucky enough to be born to Howard Yonas in my family, and that was sort of my trajectory. So how do we make it an opportunity for everyone to have that sort of equal opportunity to thrive? So I think our work is designed to kind of perpetually keep us in a learning space, but also make sure that a word that I use often is that we're accountable. Like we're accountable at the Community Foundation to the donors that entrust us with their resources to do really good work with them, those resources, to the people that we serve, both the agencies, to make sure that we're a good partner and how to support them. But ultimately, we're all accountable to the residents and communities to make sure that whether it's youth programming or family support programming or economic development initiatives, that those are really centered on the well-being of people in all areas, which I'd say at the foundation, we try to use human-centered design tools in a lot of our work, really reminding and keeping us conscious that it's we're not successful unless the grants that we're making are really helping people achieve their goals.
And you're hearing it from them, and you're asking them what they need.
That, and I would say that these are aspirational goals. I think some areas, our initiatives, we're doing better, and I'd say one of the questions we spoke earlier about is how are we different? I kind of think of us I thought a lot about that, and rather than how are we different to others in the field, it's how are we different than ourselves 5 years ago. I think a lot of our work now is really centered on that voice component, on the values of racial equity and speaking truth to power, and helping provide opportunities for integrating that voice component to inform grant making, to inform our convening, to then even inform policy advocacy work, and practicing that trajectory in a way that's really centered on people. So now that said, sometimes it's, so I think some ways it's working well, but we have so much more work to do in that space too. And then internally, how we're working more closely with our development donor services team when we have really good grants that we get, or really good grants that we can't fund, sharing with them, getting those supported. In this case, even working with our communications team to how to send sort of really direct messaging, and to always be learning, and again, accountable. We should be, if we're making change a possibility, then we should be making some mistakes too.
Sure.
So we need to be listening carefully and have the right kind of relationships where people are willing to call us out. And we need to be receptive to saying,
criticisms.
we really need to do that better. And this is what we're going to do to do that better.
And thank you for telling us.
Yeah, and I feel really fortunate to be, I was in academics for 20 years, so to be in a foundation where I'm able to use some of the skills that I was really fortunate to have an opportunity to learn, but then in a space that has an opportunity to bring those into practice really quickly. And like in this case, work with you all, and others.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to let you pick. It's like choose your own adventure. I want to talk about, and it could be the answer to the question. I want to talk about the work that you do and how it empowers young people, but I also want to hear about the juvenile justice data. Mm-hmm. So is that the answer to that question? One of the answers? One of many answers?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, I don't know about the word empower. I'd say that we've tried to ground our work in the lived experience of young people rather than look at all kinds of reports and other things of what could be done to prevent juvenile justice system involvement, to disrupt the school to prison pipeline. So we started on trying to learn how many young people are affected in our region. What are the factors that we know of more broadly and from the research and literature that affect system involvement, but then also from young people, what do they see of those factors? So I'd say, I don't know if empower is the word, and I don't want to say giving them voice, because that's not the case. It was purely providing
platform,
the right space and opportunity for them to amplify, share their voice. And we did that not only by going and listening and then taking that information. We really purposefully in all of our work are trying to avoid that harvesting model of listening, but really going back to them and saying, this is what we heard across all the groups. Does this make sense to you? And then we got corrected, and shifted it, and then went back to them again and said, these are the recommendations based on what we learned. Do they sound right? Are they in the right frame? These are the 5 different groups of young people. Then they voted and they helped us shape the language. And then we made all of our grants consistent with those recommendations.
And that language.
And
that
so
they chose.
Yeah, that they chose, and I think they've been involved with, that led to partners like yours with Gwen's Girls, who was a close partner in the research phase and designing all this work, then working with their young women on looking at the data and making sure that it was correct, and the Gwendolyn J. Research Institute. To how to work with them to sort of keep this always grounded in the end user. And then they've become a grantee, but really a partner in this space with us as well. So,
yeah, I think one interesting thing about Kathy also is that she's always bringing it back to the girls, but at the same time, just standing up and saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" Can we all talk about that together? And that partnership that she has, that alliance that she has created, is super powerful.
And I've been working with them closely, and I'm a huge fan and a great supporter. And wherever needed, I would be critical, but I think I've just really been really well aligned with the work. But she's been really remarkable, and I think a real leader as an example of, yes, it's important to be inclusive, but we need to focus on the needs of young women.
Absolutely.
And this is why, women of color. And so really challenging us all to then what are the areas that we're working in? What are the kind of changes we want to see? And they've fully owned it. But she's also, as an organization, a good model of many others, I think, in the region that do that work humbly as a facilitator, allowing the organizations to thrive and get the recognition, but always being the right partner in places that were needed. So.
Well, she gives permission to focus on that population, right? She gives she's just yep, there's all this other stuff happening. What's happening right here? Let's zero in. And I really appreciate that about working with Kathy as well.
So I don't know if I answered your question about empowering young people or their voice.
Feel free. Like I said, choose your own adventure.
Yeah, so I think that was the way that I think our work has tried to do that. And I mean, in my personal life, in ways that I work, and people volunteer in lots of spaces and do that we're engaged in different ways. But
tell me about that. Tell me about the volunteering, if you'd like.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say that, I don't know, growing up, being I've always volunteered as a coach, as a tutor, at Boys and Girls Clubs, at YMCAs. I mean, all through my life. I think even starting in middle school in different ways. But I think now finding any and all opportunities to volunteer with my family. But I'd say probably the core area that I volunteer is as firefighter and EMT in Blawnox. I'm the president of the firehouse there. Wow. In that group, and that's just providing emergency services. But that work started out of, I used to run after school programs in public housing communities in Washington, D.C. in the mid-90s. So my trajectory has been somewhat I don't want to say I have professional ADD, but I've been accused of that. My grounding in community has always been there, but I was trained as an artist, as a painter. And then over a series and years and doing fine, I think, in that space, but ended up thinking about medical school and so was preparing for that, but ended up working for a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C., where I was running after school programs. And that was, I think, the first time and space I was fully embedded in a community that was rich and powerful and strong and beautiful and the poorest place I'd ever experienced, 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. In the mid-90s, when I think violence was probably at its peak in this country. And so being there and really falling in love with the families and community, and I knew a lot about, I think, how to help run the program, but I knew nothing about the context of that community.
Right.
And it was a threatening place.
Challenging.
It was a difficult place to live and work, and my nickname for about a year was just 5-0.
Oh, wow.
Period. I was just thought I was a
5-0.
cop, and
Yep,
everyone,
that's it.
but became very close with the families and community, and after getting to know a number of the guys who were hustling and part of the crew in that community, and after they were murdered, it because and related to the drug trade, it sort of shifted my entire perspective on the world of equity and opportunity and institutional racism, and shifted my focus away from medicine and towards public health to really focus on these participatory research models that embed that expertise that saved me, that took care of me, and Rhonda, Tamika, Barbara, and all the moms that, many I still keep in touch with from a long time ago, that taught me more about Park Morton, and I could help kind of run that program. And then we created something really great together. But that work sort of led me into sort of practicing in public health. But my volunteer work in the EMS was based purely on people who had died in that community, because an ambulance wouldn't come in until the fire department was there, and the fire department didn't come until the police were there, and the police did not rush to get there.
Wow.
And so that was just so unbelievably painful and unjust that I trained as an EMT. And then,
That's amazing.
and then I stayed volunteering all these years because it's fun.
That's
Everyone,
absolutely an amazing story.
And so everyone has, and so I'm on call whenever I'm available, and serve as the medical officer at a department. And I think everyone has a space that they can volunteer in, get involved in. I really enjoy that work, so it's fun, and everyone can find the space, whether it's one time a month or every day, in this case, and in ways that make sense for them. So
I think
I just enjoy it.
That's a conversation that I have with a lot of people. I was, stay-at-home mom there for a few years, and that's an interesting space, right? Little kids. You're measuring the day in how many loads of laundry were done, and is everything is anything put away? No. So I think that's my tribe. That's what I came from, suburban Philadelphia. Those were my people, and so we were all pretty much in the weeds of that together. But as we started, the kids started growing up, and the problem started being less, urgent and less every moment. I remember just so many people talking to me I really wish I could volunteer. I drive by that specific place, and I really want to go in. I feel like I could really help there. And then talking to them next month at book club, and being like, oh, did you walk? No, I didn't go in. I feel like there's some kind of misunderstanding within ourselves, and maybe it's our egos sometimes, where people are like, I really want to do really good things for people. And I donate money, and that's great. I'm never one to say that donating money isn't great. We need to have the checks come in to these programs, absolutely. But wanting to put in the time and then being afraid, and I've been there.
I think it's a both and. I think the giving is a really important piece, but then by being involved in those spaces that we care about, there's a context for the giving as well.
Right,
because people change
what
behavior.
They actually need too, as opposed to someone saying they need this.
Well, and it sort of shapes what helps dispel stigma. It helps understand that we are all the same, that we all have the same dreams in general. We all want the same goals, and that how do we build our expectations based on those relationships too. So I think it's but I think it's also, you mentioned sort of that fear or making that step to volunteer. I think it's also based in a bit of anxiety around that change and what will that experience be like. And I feel like I've learned the most in all phases in my life when I was most uncomfortable. And so, good advice of mentors and graduate school mentors and family.
Push through.
pushing me to say, well, if that seems really uncomfortable, maybe you should try it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I've tried to embrace. I've tried to push my kids to do as well. And
tell me a little bit about that. What do you guys do volunteering as a family?
So let's take some good examples. So my wife is I think she's the treasurer now of the Latino Community Center here in Pittsburgh.
Oh, great.
She works for a Latino community credit union in North Carolina and telecommutes back and forth. So her entire career has been embedded in Latin America and South America, community economic development and microfinance development. She's brilliant. She's amazing.
I want to talk to her. We had this conversation. I want to talk to her about microfinance.
So that's sort of her specialty area.
Oh, great. So yeah, we'll get that on. We'll get
being
that.
bilingual, so being in Pittsburgh, but she still stayed working in North Carolina for the Latino Community Credit Union, but then got involved in the community center here at the Latino Community Center. And that's just been, I think, time consuming and a fantastic experience in helping that center and that community sort of become stronger here. A good example, my son is very involved in the Best Buddies program at his school. He's funny, like when I mentioned the EMS work, and he could pass out if he thinks about anything
blood related,
yeah. But I think he has a real gift for working with kids with universal needs and really making relationships across a lot of boundaries that are really authentic. So it's been fun to watch him grow and really commit to that space, and he's been involved for many years. And my daughter, I guess a good example is she volunteers in a bunch of different ways, but the best example would be her and one of her close friends in 3rd grade started a project called Home Lost, which is it started through a collaboration with a group called Community Human Services with Adrienne Wanaha when she was the executive director there.
Okay.
And they had an idea for people who were experiencing homelessness and they were cold and lonely, and they should have blankets to let them know that people care about them. So they've been collecting, thousands and thousands of t-shirts that they cut into squares and make homemade quilts.
Tie them.
They sew quilts with
wow.
Hundreds of volunteers with United Way, with community volunteers in our neighborhood. Now it's a website and people are doing it across the country, making quilts that they give to homeless shelters that she started in third grade. And it was more around, and just like you said, if you see something that you really care about, what is that just first step you can take to help make that change? So
how can you walk through the door?
Yeah. So the Home Lost Project has grown to a really big deal in a way that she owns. And she actually just had a conversation with someone last week about how to make quilts for young kids and families at Jeremiah's Place. Mm-hmm. And so now that she's 14, she's emailing with the woman at Jeremiah's Place, and she's coordinated the effort. And I just get a note to say, pick up the t-shirts, pick up the gear, things like that. So as a family, I think growing up, I'm Jewish, and the notion of tzedakah and volunteering and giving was central to how I was raised. Because we were really, parents were immigrants, my dad was, and family, and fortunate, and so what were we doing to give back? So it's been part of the way we live. It's making the most of really with finite resources to help facilitate meaningful change.
We're all on the same streets.
I don't think I ever thought about that in the same frame, but that's maybe why I feel so fortunate to be at the foundation, or part of this community too.
Well, we're really fortunate to have you, for sure.
Yeah.
Are there other outstanding programs out there right now for transitions for women and girls that you're finding for especially this population that is exiting foster care and juvenile justice?
Yeah, there are so many that I couldn't even name that whole list now.
Anything
I think
independent.
So Michelle McMurray would be the one to know, because her health and human services area.
She has that.
So I wouldn't know for sure. A couple of them I know do get county funding, which I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. I think it's really a plus in terms of diversifying.
About that online or offline someday.
Yeah. But there are programs I think it's worth looking all along the spectrum, like you mentioned, aging out of foster care. So the 412 zone and the work that they're doing and really engaging kids. That's, I think, amazing, and really trying to address that unmet need. To the programs like we talked about, Gwen's Girls, some of the spaces that were doing some really interesting non-traditional work, like the Center of Life that has a meeting room for moms. It's almost like a parent cafe as part of the program in Hazelwood, where they just recognized that moms really needed a place, families needed a place to go and hang out where their kids couldn't.
Yeah.
They could hang out and just sort of convene from the community. And so it's not a program in that way, but it's an element to the kind of services that they provide with Reverend Tim Smith. And they're just programs through, I think all of the shelters, and if you think about what Bethlehem Haven or Women's Center and Shelter, Center for Victims, those are, and I don't want to say that those are, the connotation that those are deficit-based, like people who are in crisis, but I think there are spaces like that that are doing that work in a strengths-based way.
Have you been to Center for Victims since they opened up their new spot?
A week and a half ago.
Yeah, right?
And that whole
How
second
about that
floor,
trauma?
and met with Stephanie and
Yeah.
the trauma-aware space that now they have businesses and managers coming through to learn about that. So we just met with
cool.
Stephanie and Lori and thinking
The mayor
about ways.
came in right after me. I was like, oh, I'm in the photo op.
Oh.
I was like, I want to learn
Yeah.
about this bit, please.
but that's a really great example of recognizing that, which I think that that's where a lot of what I've learned in this space too, especially with the juvenile justice work. And I'd say the people that we've worked with in collaboration with the Juvenile Probation Office, Dave Everhart and Kim Booth and Russ Carlino, along with all the organizations that partnered with us, is trying to find a way to not let that experience of system involvement define the young person. Right? This is hopefully, unfortunately something that has happened, but then move on. I think a lot of the successful organizations that are working are looking at, maybe that housing crisis or the experience of violence is hopefully a really unfortunate and obviously traumatic experience, but shouldn't define the trajectory long term. And Center for Victims and places like that whole, it's not a tour, it's almost like
it's an interactive exhibit.
That exhibit in a way that where it can be shaped so differently by other people that are in it with you, older or younger, what their experience is really designed to say that this is something that that we can move through, that you can move through, and be better.
Yeah, my dad and I walked through it together.
Yeah,
it was really
interesting.
It's just like that would never happen, right? It was just kind of an interesting juxtaposition.
And the water and the sounds, and I think what's tactile and what's colorful. And
Gail did a good job.
Yeah, really, really nicely done. So that's a good example. Yeah.
Well, it's really cool that you have that element of your job as well. That you're seeing the referrals and making the referrals and watching that path.
And I think, the ability, you mentioned the juvenile justice work, but to learn from young people and their spirit in terms of advocacy and policy change and others too is really important. I think the youth I've had the fortunate to work with here or as an artist or others, there's an authenticity and a pureness and an honesty to being young, to calling out what's wrong and to not be politically correct. So places like, One Hood Media or the Grayson Center or other groups that are doing, really great youth-led work are places I try to listen extra to
really hear it.
And to really learn more and think, okay, well, how can I help this? And in some cases, I've also learned there is no necessary role at that time. Maybe it's just to listen and look for opportunity, and that's an important lesson also to learn when to step back and sort of, maybe be an ally.
Not always be the one charging to solve.
God, often so not. Try not to be that person. Unless I'd say I've learned certainly at the foundation, and I'd say as my career has gone on, is only be in that position of leadership when asked, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm getting so many sound bites out of this, Michael. Keep talking.
I'd say I probably learned that from my kids also, who were like, yeah, I didn't ask you to do that. So, but then also, all the people that I've been fortunate to work with too.
We keep talking about the juvenile justice database, but I don't think we have a clear description of it yet. Do you want to give a clear description of it, and then we can link to any publications that are about it so people can learn more?
The juvenile justice work we've done, or the database? Yeah, so from the juvenile justice report, we worked, I guess, most closely with the Office of Juvenile Probation, who made their data available. The FISA Foundation, Christy Troutman, really funded that. She's fantastic. That project to help bring on a consultant to work with the Juvenile Justice Office here, Office of Juvenile Probation, to make a real-time database available that you can query through the Department of Human Services Division of Analytics. If you look for juvenile probation database. Dashboard, it's the Juvenile Justice Dashboard. Right. It provides an opportunity to even do queries by region, by community, by gender, by race, by charge. And the idea there is how do we provide real-time data for programs that are working in those areas to see, are they working in the right communities? Are there areas they might want to focus on? Are they able to track change that's happening related to system involvement, things like that too? And that's a great example of where, JPO worked really closely with FISA, and I was involved in that more on the geek side, I guess, helping with the data side, but with the consultant and Melanie King there, who was fantastic, to set up this interactive space that they didn't have to do, if that makes sense.
No,
they
they
don't
didn't
have to
do
share
it
that
at all.
data.
Not at all.
They don't
No,
have
it
to
was
share it
voluntary.
geographically. And so, creating that openness, I think, is a sentiment to everyone's sort of collective commitment, along with the Black Girls Equity Alliance, which really started those questions, right? As the Juvenile Justice and CYF subgroup of the Black Girls Equity Alliance was working, there was a need for data, right? And so the people were making assumptions about, well, there's more need in this area because there are more numbers, but that's a bigger geography.
Population.
And so, but and where are the referrals coming from? Is it really mostly from schools? Is it from police? So being able to start with that data of where are the young people system involved and then go deeper into those communities has been a really important model of building off of, and was excited to be part of.
Great.
And it's publicly accessible.
Great. Anyone
So,
can access it. So we'll definitely link to that so people can take a look.
We need to find ways to generate reports from that, I think, and maps. It's harder to download from it now.
Okay.
But it's data that we've been sending applicants to say check in your community.
Do a query.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully do some trend analysis over time and see are things changing. But that's a good example where multiple systems, philanthropy and private and the county, can work together too.
Right, and everyone's willing to work together.
Yeah, I was really excited that FISA was able to support that pilot. That was great.
Christy's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think those are all of my questions for today.
Great.
I can't tell you how many just amazing, sentences came out, and I was just like, whoa, wow, amazing, thank you.
I really appreciate this chance to meet and talk with you more.
This is really cool.
And this is just hopefully the start.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we're going to talk more and talk to others in this community, and maybe we'll do like a panel style someday.
Yeah. Well, and please never ever hesitate to call or text or email.
I won't. You were one of our top people.
No.
Thanks. Good, Michael. So thank you for joining us today, and if you have any questions about the Pittsburgh Foundation and what Michael does there, which is so many things that we heard about today, please email us. And do you have social media for the Pittsburgh Foundation? How would people, how should people follow what you're doing? What's a good way? The website?
Probably contact us on the foundation website. Is probably the best way.
We will definitely put that in the show notes, as well as a link to the Juvenile Justice Database that's Allegheny County.
That's a link to that database too, and then we can give you access to those reports.
The reports, which are also very key. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Were you inspired by what you heard today? What connections can you make that can help this population? Philanthropy is more than signing a check. Funding is important, but your service, social capital, and enthusiasm create true magic. You are more than a person driving a minivan from point A to point B. You have valuable skills and much needed empathy to offer. So subscribe, review, and share this podcast with your friends. Join our Empowered by Example Facebook group to stay connected and maintain accountability. Share your experiences with others, and you will empower by example.